Democrats. Today is Monday, February 6th, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. Happy Monday-ish. So it's time for my Daily Live. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. Today, the governor did his State of the State, his annual State of the State. And I want to give what I think or what the Democratic Party believes to be the real State of the State. Today, Oklahoma's governor gave the 2023 State of the State speech. Like most of the speeches he delivers, it was full of hyperbole and a great deal of self-congratulations. At times, it was unclear who was speaking. Was it Kevin Stitt or was it George Santos? Before we take an in-depth look at his remarks, I'd like to point out that in his only gubernatorial debate last year, Governor Stitt assured Oklahoma that being top 10 is an aspirational goal. It's something that we're never going to hit. That's a direct quote. If you listen to today's speech, you saw him continue to try to bluff Oklahomans by claiming 7 separate times that Oklahoma is a top 10 state. Stitt described today an Oklahoma that is far different from the place so many of us call home, a place of visions and loveliness that for most Oklahomans are both unrecognizable and largely unattainable. The bright blue skies he described are much like one might read in a children's book. If only Oklahoma funded schools so that our children could read at an appropriate grade level, which leads us to Stitt's ongoing attack on public education. He talks about funding students, not systems. Let's be clear. He's talking about funding some students. Yet his proposal is to fund private and church schools at the expense of properly funding public schools. Today, over 19 of every 20 Oklahomans believe that ages 5 through 18 are enrolled in public schools. Stitt offered zero appreciation for the overworked and underpaid teachers and didn't commit one additional dollar to public education. He insisted that our greatest asset is our children. Yet, he said kids, in quote, failing schools, end quote, should go to another school. This instead of funding and fixing public schools that are underperforming. His push towards privatization of Oklahoma schools will eventually wind up as disastrous as his attempts to privatize the handling of restaurants and state parks. You remember Swatley's. That's just the tip of what would happen to a private education system in Oklahoma. He didn't stop with K through 12 education, though. He insisted that Oklahomans should pay for education and not what he refers to as indoctrination. This is the same type of boogeyman buzzword as woke. He wants core conservative values taught, but somehow doesn't consider that indoctrination. This thinking is impossible to follow. Stitt insists that Oklahoma's colleges and universities should have less diversity, equity, and inclusion officers and more career counselors. This stands in direct contrast to the number of universities throughout the country that are now offering degree programs and graduate certificates in DEI. This is a need that will continue to be present in the future, yet Stitt wants to delete it from all of Oklahoma education today. Not surprisingly, Stitt refuses to acknowledge in his speech the deep levels of corruption within his administration. There was, of course, no mention of the many millions of dollars he wasted on COVID supplies that were never delivered. He didn't bring up the Swatley scandals that we've been talking about a little while ago. He also ignored the many non-competitive contracts that his administration has provided and the cronyism that is rampant in our state's government. He opened his whole speech with a lie that he promised more transparency in government and delivered it to the people of Oklahoma. His administration has been so secretive in virtually every aspect that we can't believe this part of his assertion. He also failed to address the two state representatives that have been credibly charged with felonies, yet still remain able to propose and vote on legislation impacting the rest of us. This tells us that he has zero interest in rooting out harmful elected officials in Oklahoma. His Santos-like statements also turn to Oklahoma's U.S. military veterans. There are 340,000 veterans living in Oklahoma. That's 9% of our population. He says that we're helping and supporting Oklahoma vets. All the while, the executive director of the Oklahoma Office of Veteran Affairs contends that the agency is operating outside of the law. This is because of the collusion with the governor by naming illegitimate commissioners to the agency. How in the world can Stitt say we are becoming the country's best state for veterans if he's in constant conflict with them? Another thing completely absent from Stitt's speech was the incredible income to the state through President Biden's Build Back Better and infrastructure investment plans. He claimed credit for the fact that 95% of Oklahomans will have high-speed broadband by 2028, but ignored the fact that it's funded through the federal government. No thanks to any of Oklahoma's Washington delegation. He also bragged about how much Oklahoma funds law enforcement without telling the public how much of that was a direct benefit of the Biden administration and nothing from Stitt. Stitt is only too happy to grab the money from the feds, over $31.9 million from the Biden administration, and there's more coming through, while at the same time bad-mouthing Washington and claiming to protect Oklahomans from federal overreach, especially in the term of guns. Stitt also said he is protecting our values without ever defining who our really is. He blasted the nation's mandated vaccines, which we know saved millions of lives, and has never mentioned the 16,000 Oklahomans who died under his own lack of pandemic leadership. When it comes to energy, Stitt said that our energy grid is the envy of the world, while never explaining why Oklahoma's utility rates are among the very highest in the nation. When he started talking about taxes, he crowed about his plan to eliminate sales tax on groceries. That idea was first brought by Emily Virgin when she was the leader of the Democratic minority. While I could go on, point by point, most of his speech was simply more of the same self-aggrandizing that we've become accustomed to from this governor. I won't even address his talking about faith as it relates to his faith without respecting the faith and traditions of other Oklahomans. Still, one thing caused my breath to catch, and I must point it out here. He said Oklahoma was becoming the most pro-family state in the nation, where every member of the family is loved, supported, and included. He said it, go back and watch. This is perhaps the boldest lie of the day. Blocking life-affirming and life-saving medical care of young people does not support families. Eliminating a woman's right to decide with her doctor her own course of health care does not support families. Destroying public education does not support families. Oklahoma's median income of $28,944 may support one person, but it does not support a family. Eliminating rights, except of course gun rights, does not support families. Let's be clear. I love Oklahoma. This is the place I choose to live. It is my home. But I also choose to live in a reality, not the fairy tale Oklahoma where Stitt seems to reside. It is my obligation to point out what is wrong with this administration, especially when the governor refuses to tell us the truth. He says the state of the state is the strongest it has ever been. Governor, I respectfully disagree. Stitt says we've brought the American dream back to Oklahoma, that anything is possible in Oklahoma. We'll see. He concluded by saying, God bless Oklahoma. Friends, that's the only real hope we have, because we're not being blessed by this governor, his illusions, or his administration. Thank you so very much for joining me. I'll be back here tomorrow at 4:15. But in the meantime, please join Scott Hamilton on the Hamilton Report at 6:30, where he'll be joined by Teacher of the Year, Felix Linden. You guys have a great night.